I was born and raised in Doha, Qatar for the first 13 years of my life, from 1991 to 2004. I practically know every inch, every corner, every block in the country. It's a small, tiny country. And I noticed because I've been watching, and what I do want to talk about in this video is the whole thing with Qatar hosting the World Cup and the controversy that surrounds it. And I've been watching lots of documentaries recently on that. And it's funny because I think every single location that they showed in the documentaries, from like the rich parts to the poor parts, I've been there. I've been there. I know it, right? So it's a small country, of course. If you were born and raised there for 13 years, you pretty much know it all, right? Like you know it all in the sense that you've been. It's a small country. You've been everywhere in the country, and we moved several different houses several different times to completely different locations. So that sort of, for me, this is why I pretty much know every bit of it. That's not so important for this video, but it's sort of more so of a reflection for me on the place that I grew up in, the place that I was raised in, that I grew up in. So what I want to talk about in this video is the controversy surrounding Qatar hosting the World Cup. And it's so difficult not to be biased one way or another. It's so difficult. Okay, it's so difficult, but I'm going to try and do that, and I'll probably fail at that. Okay? Why do I say it's difficult to be biased? Because from one perspective, I was born and raised there, and in fact, my family lives there still to this day. Right? They've been there over 30 years. My parents have been there over 30 years. Well over 30 years. So, and I visit every now and then. I was there a few years ago. I visit every now and then. The place is completely different now than the place that I grew up in. So on one hand, I grew up there. On the other hand, I am an ex-Muslim, and I do have, let's say, a chip on my shoulder when it comes to that, right? Because I also know how oppressive this, this cult can be, this cult belief system can be. So I want to try and assess the situation from a reasonable, rational point of view. So the controversy goes, Qatar, and I'm, by the way, a huge football fan also. Okay, so that let's put that out there. So in 2010, 12 years ago, Qatar was announced to have the rights to host the most prestigious sporting event, and otherwise the most prestigious event. The final of the 2018 World Cup was watched at the same time by 13% of the world population. Take that in. So it's very prestigious, it's very big thing. And so Qatar was declared 12 years ago to be the host. So the controversy goes, this is how it goes, right? On one hand, we have people saying Qatar bought the World Cup, they bribed their way in there, and the proof is in the pudding, because half of the people, I believe 12, I think, 11 or 12 of the people who voted for who should host the World Cup have been arrested since for corruption charges, related and otherwise unrelated to the Qatar hosting the World Cup, right? And the controversy goes, well, the conditions are unsuitable, which is why the World Cup has been moved to November instead of in the summer. This is a country that violates human rights, and there is no football culture, although people are crazy about football, but in truth, what people mean when they say football culture is true. No one really goes and watches the local league. Like, the average attendance is abysmal. You're lucky to get 1,000 people in a game, whereas your average attendance in Europe, in, let's say, England, Germany, particularly those two countries, and Spain and Italy, we're talking 40,000 people in a game on average, right? The big games more. If you have a bigger stadium like Barcelona's, you get, on the big games, you get a full house, 100,000, right? In Qatar, you'd be lucky to get 1,000 people, and that's in the big games. But people love football, they love to watch football, and they love to play football, right? So there is a football culture, it's just, it's not nearly the same as in Europe. right? Um, so there are a lot of arguments there. I know there's some that I've missed here, but basically it's corrupt. There's violations of human rights. The workers have been treated like garbage, and there is at least 6,500, and that's a conservative estimate of workers dying because of the terrible conditions of building the stadiums. The temperatures there are upwards of 50 Celsius in the summer. There's no exaggeration about that. Workers do work in the summer outside. Okay, I'm telling you right now, they work. So there's that argument, right? That's one side of the equation. Let's call it, for lack of better words here, the one extreme of the spectrum. And then the other extreme says, this is good for the Arab world because, you know, there's 450 million Arabs and they really love football. They never really had good teams except for every now and then Algeria, Morocco, Egypt will pop in here and there. Egypt's pretty good in Africa. I think the best ever performing Arab country in the World Cup would be Saudi Arabia in '94. I think they made it to the knockout stage. They beat Belgium and they were second in a pretty tough group. And then you have Morocco has always been solid whenever they showed up. Algeria, they've been solid a lot of World Cups whenever they showed up. Algeria also made it to the knockout stage, I think, in 2014. They almost beat Germany, who turned out to be the champion. Anyway, but in general, you know, so the argument says, well, this is good for the Arab world, and it's good to spread the game. You know, it's always been in Europe or South America. We've had it in Asia and in Africa, like in East Asia. Why not have it in the Middle East? Why not let the beautiful game spread there? Why not let, you know, boost tourism there, boost interest in the local culture, etc., etc. So that's one part of the argument. Of course, the other part, and another one says, well, we didn't really bribe. Come on, we all know that's bullshit, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. And yeah, the other argument is, hey, this will be good. And then, of course, the government in Qatar will say, well, yeah, you're right. We treat the workers like crap, but can't you see we're passing new laws? We're improving their conditions. We've built better accommodation for them. And without us hosting the World Cup, these reforms would have taken a lot longer. So, hey, us hosting the World Cup is a net positive in the big picture, is a net positive for the conditions of these workers. So if we didn't host it, simply put, those reforms would have taken longer. And so, of course, the government says, yeah, we've been making a lot of progress on that. And then the other side of the camp will say, yeah, but they've really been moving at a turtle space. And we actually don't even think those reforms are really being enforced. And you know, some people like Gary Neville, he visited this new, like the new accommodations, the better and improved accommodations, and they were still pretty small. Like they were, let's say, better than, you know, the otherwise terrible camps that, you know, these workers have been living in for so long. But still, actually, they're quite small and claustrophobic. And so some say, well, really, their reforms they're still not up to standard as far as human rights go, okay? So we have these two camps, and I'm sure I missed different arguments for different camps. So, okay, there's the controversy. Of course, a lot of people are pissed off because, you know, it's in November. Traditionally, World Cups have been in summer, and this disturbs the seasons in many places, like in Europe and in most of the places in the world. Their seasons are from, let's say, September till April. And then you get a little break, or May, and then you get a little break. You have usually about a month before the World Cup to prepare and rest and recover from a tough season. And then you have about a month after to recover and rest to prepare for the new season. Makes sense. So people are complaining this is, you know, overtaxing the players, and it's true. A lot of people a lot of players went into the tournament injured. So there's the two sides. Where does the truth lie? I do not claim to be the truth teller or the one that holds the keys for this whole thing. I do not claim it. There is absolutely no way for me to drop my bias here. No way. Do not believe anyone that says I'm unbiased. All we can do is try. And I do not claim that what I'm going to tell you and the opinion that I'm going to provide you here on what my personal stance on the whole thing is, I do not claim this to be the truth. Okay? So, let's get on with it. What is my opinion? Well, first of all, we need the question. Let's start with question number 1. Did Qatar buy this World Cup? Or did they earn it based on merit? And this one's pretty obvious. I think my opinion is well backed, is no. Yes. Of course they bought the World Cup. They're the richest country in the world per capita, per GDP per capita. Or at least in the top 5 consistently now. Because it's such a small country, they have 3 million people, of which only 10%, so 300,000 are locals. Therefore, they have a shit ton of money, and of course they bought it. They paid out of their, money was coming out of their ear holes, man. Just gave money, right? And of course they did. However, I do want to say that they simply played by the rules. So the one thing that the first camp is missing, the camp that is very critical of Qatar, there is one thing that they're missing, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, which is because there's so much focus on the corruption that took place and the bribery, and they outright basically bought the World Cup. Even all the people who voted, they were arrested for corruption charges in the following years. It's obvious. However, what I would like to emphasize on, along with the corruption, clearly, is they played by the rules. Russia did the same thing in 2018. Germany, the mighty Germany, the exemplary, right? The good example, the organized country, the country that produces Mercedes and Audis, the country of industry, the country of organization, the country of punctuality, the country of human rights, bought the World Cup. There is sufficient evidence for that. Bought the World Cup in 2006. And there is also some interesting evidence that South Africa bought it in 2010. In other words, it is, and Brazil, of course, in 2014. Actually, that's pretty much in the bag. That's pretty much been bought too, right? So essentially, this has been a tradition, and that shouldn't surprise you guys because football, money, politics, they're all connected. That shouldn't surprise you really. This has been going on for God knows how long. In fact, I'd be surprised if there has been any World Cup in the last 20, 30, 40 years that hasn't been bought to the highest bidder, along with the political influence that's happening. So, if we can acknowledge that, then we can go ahead and criticize Qatar for doing that. Okay? And I am just as much of a critic as all these crazy hardcore people that are rightfully, justifiably criticizing Qatar. But just keep in mind, this is how you earn the right for this big, prestigious, every 4 years event. You earn it by buying your way into it. Qatar played by the rules. They flexed their muscles. They got a lot of money. And they bought it. Okay? So, that's question 1. We covered that. That's pretty easy. Question 2. This is where I can provide my own direct experience. Are workers as mistreated as portrayed in the media? And my answer to that, based on 13 years of growing and living there, worse than what's portrayed in the media. Worse. So, as a background information here, there was this, still ongoing in many ways, Arab slavery. There was, if you go look up on Google, Arab slavery, So slavery is actually part of Islam, believe it or not. The religion that claims peace, that claims equality. The founder of it, Uncle Mo, had many slaves. He had sex slaves. He had slaves that just served him, did whatever he wanted. If he, wanted a cup of water or something, he could just tell the slave. He was a slave owner, and a big time one. And he waged war, and he captured slaves, and he loved the sex slaves. If you don't believe me, look this up, folks. It's all over it's all over. Like, this is known. It's just like Muslims try to hide that stuff and try to sugarcoat it. It is what it is. So, and there was this Arab slavery that's been going on for a long time. I might not be accurate on this, but I believe it was banned in Saudi Arabia only this century. Only this century, I think they banned slavery. I actually want to double check that right now, so if you just give me a second. Yes, so slavery in Saudi Arabia was banned in 1962. Even later than I thought it was. Now, Saudi Arabia is like the birthplace of Islam. Why didn't they ban slavery until 1962? Because, the founder of this cult was a slave master. So, yeah, Saudi Arabia had to do it because they have an image that they need to protect in a vastly changing world, and they no longer have the power. When I say they no longer have the power, I mean, at some point Islam had the power, therefore you could just do what you wanted as you pleased. You didn't have to worry about your global image. Right now is a different story, right? And there's different values, different global values, and slavery is not one of those. And so Saudi Arabia had to do it for practical reasons. So how come the birthplace of Islam and the place with the holiest of holy places there, the birthplace of the founder and his great companions who were also slave owners, how come they didn't ban slavery until 1962? Well, that's because, again, when you really look into this cult belief system which Qatar adheres to, you see that this is just the way of life. And the Arab slavery and the slave trade was very bad, at least as bad as the Atlantic slave trade, at least as bad, if not worse. So nowadays things are a bit different. But people there still have this mentality like we are superior, and so there's this it's just plain racism. Let's just put it for what it is. It's plain racism. And so they found a back door for slavery, which is importing these workers, tricking them. There's a lot of tricking that goes on from Nepal, from India, from Pakistan. And other places, Philippines. They trick them. They have these agencies that trick them. They give them these false promises. And then when they get there, the sponsors confiscate their passports and they're stuck. They can't leave the country. They're stuck. And they're slaves. That's slavery, folks. That's modern day slavery, but not officially, not on paper. Although if you're confiscating someone's passport and you're not allowing them to leave the country, what is that? That's slavery. And I said my answer to this question, it's much worse than what the media portrays, because the media only portrays the media just wants to sell. It just wants to, the media is terrible. It's terrible. Okay, the mainstream media anyway is terrible. But sometimes, every now and then, they get something right, and this is one of those things they're getting right. Okay, for their own nefarious agendas. Don't think that the people in the media are good, out of the good. Of course, there's good people working there, actually, genuinely wanting to expose this. But, most of the times, there is those higher-ups in the media pushing agendas. Just they want to sell more. They want their media outlet to be more popular than the other ones, etc. Okay? So, but there's many good people, even in mainstream outlets, that really genuinely want to uncover these things. But it's worse. It's worse. And I've seen it. I have seen it with my eyes, 13 years. In fact, folks, I'm going to share with you something shameful, because there's many Indians there. There's at least, I think, 30 or 40% of the population in Qatar. The entire population is Indian workers, and they have the lower jobs, like construction jobs in like freaking terrible hot conditions. It's really bad, and like their accommodations, man, it makes you cry. It makes you cry. Okay, it really makes you cry. So what was I gonna say? Yeah, so I was gonna just give me a second, guys. Yeah, so I grew up in a mentality, right? But I've suffered racism of my own, because the locals there, the Qataris, they look down on everybody. And there is good ones, okay? There's goodness in everything, but generally speaking, the majority, let's say, okay, the majority, especially when I was growing up, maybe now things are changing, especially with the younger generation, okay? But when I was growing up there, the majority of the local people, the Qatari people, look down on everybody, including Arabs. I'm Syria, okay? My parents are from Syria. But there is a hierarchy to this, right? So, still, as a Syrian, as an Arab, living in an Arab country, I'm still on the higher side of the pyramid, right? So, although the Qatari people look down on me, and I've had lots of racism growing up, you Syrian, like it was like an insult, right, from the Qataris, but I myself look down on the Indians, the Nepalis, the Pakistanis, the people that were doing the shit jobs. Because at least I was upper middle class. My father is a medical doctor. I had a very good life. Thank you, God. I had a really good life. Always lived in big houses, in villas, right? If you're a doctor there, you're highly paid. If you're an engineer, you're highly paid. So I was still on the higher side of things. So I looked down, I shared the sentiment with the rest of my fellow Arabs and the Qataris, which are the people of the land, the native people. And I also looked down on them. I looked down on them, right? I didn't treat them like shit, but I looked down on them. I saw them as inferior. And when I went to Canada, we immigrated to Canada when I was 13. There's a lot of Indian people there, right? Indian immigrants. And I'm ashamed to say this, but in the beginning, I wouldn't shake an Indian person's hands, and I would be puzzled as to why they're being treated normal. And I would be puzzled as to why they're not doing these shitty, inhumane jobs. And it took me about a year of integration to realize, people here are kind of equal. And yes, there is some form of racism, but at least it's not in your face, and you're not encouraged to do that, certainly in the country, in Canada. But actually in Qatar, at least when I was growing up, it was encouraged. Like, it was just like, nobody would ever tell you not to be racist. It's expected of you. So, yeah, it took me like a year to realize, people are equal here. We're all the same. We all have the same opportunity. The Indian guy can be a doctor as much as me, or as much as anybody else, and they can be whatever they want. In Qatar, there are some Indian doctors, but they are extremely rare. Most of the Indians there are doing the construction jobs, which are in inhumane conditions, under scorching hot temperatures. So yeah, I cannot simply not say that these workers are treated like garbage. Now, is the government improving the conditions? Yes, they are. Yes, they're pushing for reforms, and when reforms are introduced, they do take time to implement. They're not implemented right away. You need to condition the people that, hey, we're in a new paradigm, and it takes a bit of time. It was never going, they started introducing these reforms, I think like 5 years ago, right? Maybe a bit earlier or a bit later, but let's say 5 years ago on average, these reforms. You're not gonna just condition people to adopt a new paradigm in 5 years. So it's a good thing that they're doing that. In a way, the government's right when they say, if it wasn't for the World Cup, this was a catalyst. In a way, they're right. But the question is, after the World Cup, will they continue to do that? And will people actually adopt a new paradigm? At the very best, it will take time. At the very worst, when the World Cup is over, you send a lot of these workers back home and you just continue to treat the rest like shit. And that's what a lot of people are afraid of. Because in the 30s, 36 or 38, 36 I think, right? Germany hosted the Olympics. What's his name? Hitler. He cleaned up Germany, like he made it this like paradise. He used the tactics of propaganda that he was very good at. And they hosted the freaking Olympics. And people went to Germany and said, what a great country. You know, what a great place. And as soon as the Olympics were over, you know, everything went back to the way it was. Tyranny and terror. So this is known as sport washing. And I believe that's what Qatar is trying to do. Okay? So there is my opinion on that, right? So to wrap things up, should Qatar have been awarded this World Cup? In my humble opinion, absolutely not. Are the workers treated, the migrant workers treated as badly as the media is trying to portray? They are treated worse, at least historically have been treated worse. They may have been treated better now in the last couple of years, and maybe they will be for a little bit of time just to portray a certain image to the world. And finally, what do we do as people about that? Knowing all of that, contemplating all of that, if you share the same opinion as me, what do we do? Do we boycott the World Cup? Especially as football fans who enjoy good football, enjoy watching this spectacle, what do we do? Do we boycott this event, this, Goliath of an event, this monumental event? I mean, I don't know, right? I don't know. Do we? Is that going to do something? Probably. Probably. The moralist in me says I should be boycotting the World Cup. In reality, will I do that? I'll still be tuning into the highlights probably for every single game. I'll be watching the opener. I'll be watching the semifinal and the final, and maybe a few games in between. I don't really have time to sit there and watch all the games. Should I boycott the World Cup from start to finish? Probably. But I think I am too curious, and I'm too curious to see what's going on, who's gonna win, what's happening. I think I'm too curious to do that, and that's on me. That's the hypocrisy, and I admit there is a hypocrite in me here that is still going to tune in, knowing from direct experience, having seen this for 13 years, what it took to build those stadiums, to build those train stations. By the way, Doha right now is a marvelous city. I have to say, it is a marvelous city. It is becoming a jewel in an endless desert. And I love it and I hate it. I love it and I hate it because the place has really come a long way since I was growing up in it. It's actually quite a delight to be there for a little bit of time, of course. The country is extremely safe. I think it's consistently ranking in the top 5 safest country in the world. You could walk anytime, anywhere, as a man, as a woman, at 3 a.m. and you have zero concerns over your safety. There is definitely a charm to Doha now, and I was there 3 years ago. There's certainly a charm to it, especially now with the metro and because the country's always suffered with traffic. But I think now, after, especially when the World Cup is over, I think the country will really be something to behold. I think all this infrastructure that they had to build for the World Cup is really incredible, and will make Doha, because they're really trying to diversify. They know fossil fuels by the end of the century, they're gonna go out of stock, basically. People aren't gonna be using them anymore. So they're trying to invest in land, in football clubs, in sports, infrastructure, tourism. So they have their purpose for this. You know, the government has their purpose. And I have to say the government does look out for its people. But at what cost? At the expense of other people. And so I'm torn apart here between admiring this city, admiring this country and where they have come. But at what cost, man? At what cost? At the expense of others. You cannot move forward in life. This is just the laws of creation, the laws of God, the laws of the universe. You cannot move forward in the long term in life at the expense of others. So I know what I know, and I know what I know because I've seen it, I know it, it is my opinion, but hey, if you're gonna be honest and you grew up in that place and you're gonna be 100% honest here, this is the situation. And this is what it took to build this wonderful infrastructure, to build these wonderful stadiums, to build this wonderful country. It really is now. It's very prosperous. They have a lot of money. But if they have a lot of money, couldn't they have done it in a better way? That's what boggles my mind. And see, this is where it's not a money thing, it's a mentality thing. Because slavery, like I said, Saudi Arabia abolished slavery 1962. Because slavery is actually part of Islam, whether you like it or not. And these people there, that's what they worship. That's the indoctrination. And like I said, the founder of this cult belief system is a slave owner himself. So, yeah, they could have done it in a lot better way. They have so much money that they could have gotten these workers to do all this work and treated them a whole lot better, and then treat them like slaves because it's a mentality thing. And here I am, a hypocrite. I'll be tuning into the first game. I want to see the opening ceremony. And as someone who grew up there, I'm impressed. Like, again, I can't hide how impressed I am by the spectacle, by what they accomplished. However, at the same time, I'm deeply hurt for the people that did this. So, as a hypocrite, I'll still be tuning into this. I'll still be watching the highlights probably for every game. And watching, I don't know how many games there are, but at least watching the opener, the final, the semi-final. Maybe some nice games in between in the group stage. Just don't have time. And the hypocrisy is if I had more time, I'd probably watch more games. So yeah. I don't know what the whole point of this video is. I think it's just an asshole just rambling, right? With no real concrete conclusion. But hey, man, our world is corrupt and I don't know where to start. It's like a big giant mess. Imagine walking into like a big house and every part of it is like complete mess. Where do you start? I don't know. Thank you for listening to my rant. Thank you for listening to this. I mean, again, I don't know what the point of this is. And I'll see you in the next video.